Hello, friends, and welcome into another weekly update from our team here at NC Family alongside John and Jerry. I'm Mitch, and this is the week ending October the 3rd. There's a lot to get to for this week's update, and so, gentlemen, let's jump right into some articles that our staff and team have put together this past week and some things that we need to talk about. Specifically, let's start with the FDA's ruling or opening up a review of safety guidelines on one of the drugs in the battery that's used for chemical abortions called Mifepristone. Yeah. John, what has the FDA done? What are they doing? And what do we need to know as a result of what they're doing?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mitch. The FDA has announced that they're going to be reviewing Mifepristone, health risks associated with it. Not only the fact, and they didn't say this, but not only the fact does it take the life of an unborn child, yeah, but there are significant harms and significantly more harms than we generally recognized or that they recognized over the years to women who take these chemical abortion drugs. And back in 2000, the year 2000, when the FDA initially approved Mifepristone use, there were a lot of regulations and restrictions in place, and they have gradually, in the last 2 decades, or more than 2 decades, whittled away at those. And so basically, women can get chemical abortion drugs to do at-home abortions through the mail with no prescription and in some cases no consultation with a physician. And this is really alarming. Of course, we talked about a number of weeks ago that our friends at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, headed up by our good friend Ryan Anderson, did a study of Mifepristone and the risks associated with it and found that those risks are much, much higher than was publicly recognized.
Yes.
And so I think based on that report, in large part, but also in the outcry of a lot of public policy organizations, including the North Carolina Family Policy Council and others, including the President of the United States, the FDA has announced again and agreed to take a closer look at Mifepristone, and so we'll see what happens with that.
Couldn't agree more. We wrote that letter back on April the 29th. You can go back to our website, ncfamily.org, to see the letter we wrote to the President. Public outcry has been a huge part of this, the EPPC report. Jerry, what do you find most compelling about what's happening right now in regard to the FDA and Mifepristone?
Well, that study alone hopefully should have been enough for the FDA to revisit this. I mean, they say it's the largest known study of the abortion pill. It was based on over 865,000 cases from 2017 to 2023. The information that had been reported prior to this, saying the summary figure was less than 0.5% in clinical trials. That's less than 1 in 100. Yet this study came out and said it's more than 1 in 10 reporting serious adverse events. It says over 22 times the information people have been relying on, saying, okay, this is not harmful medication. You don't have to worry about side effects and things. Well, I mean, it was like 22 times what people had been relying on prior to this. Hopefully, this is all going to lead not only to revisiting, just as you said, John, the early information that they put out about things that people needed to do, about having physicians involved. They literally need to back up and say, should this medication even be out?
That's right.
I've heard some people say, with that high a number, if you've got more than 1 in 10 reporting serious adverse events, generally, I don't know this, but to say, look, would you even put out a medication that has that at high level?
Well, and the percentage of women who are, and abortions that are a result of chemical abortion drugs from Mifepristone, women ordering them through the mail or getting them and having at-home abortions, is now over 60%.
Yes.
Some are saying 65% and higher of abortions that are taking place in our country right now are drug-induced, chemical-induced abortions. And so this is becoming more and more and more of a grave concern. And so we're grateful that the FDA has announced that they're going to be taking a look at this. And our pleading to them is that they would really consider the truthful, factual information about these chemical abortion drugs and address the incredible harm that is being done and is likely to be done well into the future.
Absolutely. A more complete article that you'll find in our upcoming magazine, the NC Family Magazine. You'll find in that magazine. You're going to want to read that. Let's go to an amicus brief that we were a part of. Another article that was written this past week. Amicus brief that we were a part of on women's sports. Gentlemen, it appears that the tide is turning at the national level. Certainly 26 states have now passed a bill protecting women in sports and private spaces as well. North Carolina is one of those. We did back in 2023, thanks to the North Carolina legislature and organizations that were part of that, including ours. Some people are asking, what's the big deal when it comes to this? Not just for women in sports, but now that states have done this, doesn't that mean everybody's protected? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. And so this amicus brief, specifically filed on a case that will be coming out of Idaho, focuses on what it would mean basically at a national level. What do we need to know about this story?
Well, the amicus brief, or the friend of the court brief, was filed on behalf of the North Carolina Family Policy Council and a number of other family policy councils and interested parties, including legislators from states across the nation who are encouraging the United States Supreme Court to rule favorably in this case on truth and based on that sports ought to be designated based on biological sex, and that the privacy of women ought to be upheld in our nation. And so the Ninth Circuit took up this case and suggested, after reviewing it, that it was likely to violate the Constitution. And so the case has been appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And again, this friend of the court brief is asking the court, with a lot of substantive reasoning, to rule in favor and uphold the safety of women's sports.
This is one of several amicus briefs we've been part of, Jerry.
Yeah, and it is. It's interesting. This is how the court system works. How our whole system of government, laws are passed. They get challenged by people who don't agree with the laws. In this case, it's just hard to understand how. I mean, I know the Ninth Circuit sometimes is not, for what courts can all be tempted to do, arrive at a conclusion that they want to arrive at without really looking. I mean, it's just hard to understand how they could look at the facts, just basic knowledge that people have in this case about women and men in sports, the difference in size, in strength, and you mentioned, John, the privacy issue that comes up with locker rooms related to the sports. And it's just like everything seems to be compelling for the government to say, yes, these laws, however you want to test them, they should pass any constitutional test.
Yeah. And while this issue, for all intents and purposes, has been resolved in North Carolina because of the legislation, as you mentioned, Mitch, that was passed by the General Assembly in 2023 session, this still is an issue that is being debated and deliberated in states across the nation. And this is one way, by signing on to a friend of the court brief, an amicus brief like this, one way that we can help support this effort across the country and in other states who don't have legislators with the will to do things like protect women's sports and address the issues, Jerry, as you said, of safety and privacy and just common sense fairness.
Well, hopefully this decision that will be forthcoming by the Supreme Court will help future generations to look at this period of history and say, what in the world were we thinking for a period of time when it comes to men and women and God-given biological sex? Let's move on. One of the things that we have worked on in years past, and we've done again this year, is our votes report. It's been a great legislative session this year, and the votes report is going to tell people what happened this session in regard to particular votes. John, what does the vote report for this year tell us?
Well, there are a lot of bills that we've talked about over this year while the legislature's been in session that have dealt with parental rights issues, gender and sexuality issues, DEI in public education, just a whole host of issues of interest to families and impacting biblical values in North Carolina. And so this votes report is focused on identifying exactly how members of the State House and the State Senate voted and recorded votes on the floor of the House and the Senate on issues of interest. I believe there are 12 votes in the State Senate that we have included in the votes report and 17 votes in the State House that we've included in the report. And this is a really important report so that voters, citizens across the state can review and understand how their representatives in both the State House and Senate are voting on issues they care about. Doing the research yourself is a monumental task.
Yeah.
And so we have compiled these vote reports into one document. We've also provided kind of an explanation or a review of the legislative session to help you understand the context in which these votes have taken place. A number of bills, as you know, have been vetoed by the governor, and some of those vetoes have been overridden. Other ones are still pending. And so the legislature is still technically in session. They've designated now several days each month before the General Assembly comes back for the short session in late April. They've designated certain days each month that they'll come back into session, or at least may be called back into session. And when that happens, they certainly could vote on veto overrides and other measures as well. So, but despite all that, we think it's important to go ahead and publish this report. We're not going to wait till the quote-unquote end of session, because it may actually never end until
It is the end of session.
sometime next year. So we want to get this important information into your hands so that you can know how your elected officials in the state legislature voted and also hold them accountable for their votes. And if you are concerned about the way that your legislators voted, we would encourage you to reach out, contact them, and let them know your positions, help educate them about these issues. And that's the way that our government is intended to work. So we're expecting that this votes reports will be published as early as next week, and we look forward to getting that information out to you all so that you, again, can be well informed about how your legislators are voting, what actions they're taking on issues that you care about, and then that you can also reach out and contact them to share your perspectives and concerns, which you may have done as these bills were moving through the legislative process.
My favorite thing about the votes report is that it's an online resource. It's highly interactive, meaning that you can click through it. You can click what vote it was, who voted that way. You
can see the language of the
absolutely
bills.
Incredible resource, and you're definitely going to want to take a look at that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Jerry, another great publication that we've got coming out. Got some of the vote report.
Well,
yes, sir.
Yeah, I know we talking about
yes,
before,
sir.
But it's coming to my mind just what we do. Of course, y'all are familiar. We put out a voter guide at election time, and that's where the candidates can respond. And quite honestly, some people say, well, is that really how they're going to vote? I think generally I don't know of times, with rare exceptions, where that's not the case. But sometimes they don't necessarily respond to that. This is something they have responded to when they voted on
pressing the
issues.
green or red button
They had to,
on the floor of the House.
Some maybe were
red vote
absent,
for
but
your
in
green
most cases, they either voted yes or no.
That's right.
So this is a clear indication of where people stand. And, you know, there is a place for partisanship. We're nonpartisan. We don't grade, report on this except to give you the information and say, here's how people voted. And just as you say, John, one, it can direct how you vote, but I think your point was an excellent one to add, John, about contacting people based on that, where you can say, I really appreciate the way that you stood on this issue, or, you know, I think it would have been better if you'd voted this way on this issue because this, they are like all of us. They're always in a learning process, and sometimes maybe they're locked in on a position, but we know cases where members have heard enough information, they go, oh, I need to change my position on that.
You can help them learn. So this is a great resource for that. Another great resource is Family North Carolina, and we have a fall issue that's coming out here in the next couple of weeks that you are definitely want to get. There are several stories in that, and we've talked about most of these stories so far throughout many of the updates that we've given you. A story about Dean and Ann Arp, state representative, and you're not going to miss a story of God blessing them with the opportunity to take heroic action to literally save
a life.
Save a life, and it's an amazing story. Cell phones and mobile devices in schools and what families and parents and churches, an entire community can do about that. Another on mail order abortion, something that we covered at the very beginning of this. And then a special tribute written by John about Dr. James Dobson, an incredible story there, along with some stories that it's a great issue. I'm at a loss for words for it.
Similarly, because I think maybe, John, you were working on that before Charlie Kirk's
Yes.
death, but there's something there as well, just to help people understand how we're thinking through, encouraging all of us to respond as Christians to all these things that are happening.
Absolutely. Well, last two things we'll give you is our upcoming dinner galas, one in Charlotte, one in Winston-Salem. As you're listening to this, it's possibly the week of our Charlotte dinner on October the 9th with special guest and nationally known author Brant Hansen. There's still an opportunity for you to go to that. Go and get your seat for that event. And then our Winston-Salem dinner coming up on the 13th of November with Far Curlin. It's going to be a great dinner. Both of those are going to be great events and opportunities for you to hear more about what we're doing here at NC Family to make sure that our state is a state where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes. It's easy for some to say. Families thrive and life is cherished. Words are hard today, apparently. Yes.
Yeah, as we close out, Mitch, I just do want to acknowledge the tragic event that took place in Southport, North Carolina.
Yes.
This past weekend, and our hearts go out to the victims of that senseless crime, the families that were affected by it, those who are recovering still, and just the whole Southport community and the Brunswick County area. It just seems like almost every day there's a tragic event like this that takes place across the nation. And we've talked about it last week with respect to Charlie Kirk and, a number of other events that have transpired since his untimely death. And just, we just want to encourage you all, as we are doing, just to continue to pray for our families, our state, and our nation. We know that in a lot of these instances, there are mental health issues that are readily apparent with the individuals who are perpetrating these tragic events. But there's also, even more fundamentally, a spiritual issue that exists there.
Absolutely.
And so I think not only can we all commit to just continue to pray, but that we can also just pray for the Lord's guidance and grace and direction to reach out to individuals who, may be dealing with some challenging things in their lives, and just interact with them with care and love and truth. Because I think sometimes just a simple expression of that can make a difference in somebody's lives, and then that can make a difference in many more lives.
Absolutely.
So let's just commit to doing that, to pray. Let's not act out of fear. We know that God is in control, that He's sovereign over all things, but He does allow humans to continue to act in a sin nature. And so, these things are spiritual at their core.
That's right.
And so let's pray for the heart of our nation, the heart of our state, and the heart of our families and friends.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, John. Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our weekly update for this week ending October the 3rd. Thank you for watching, listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless each and every one of you.